نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. مسجد نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. صحن میں آقا بیٹھے ہوں گے، صحن میں آقا بیٹھے ہوں گے، گرد اصحاب کا حلقہ ہوگا. تو نے اپنے دروازے پر وہ بچے بھی دیکھے ہوں گے جن بچوں نے پیار میں اکثر، جن بچوں نے پیار میں اکثر آپ کا دامن چوما ہوگا. مسجد نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. میرے نبی کے گلشن میں کیا راحت ہوگی جس دم اس میں سارے صحابہ کلیاں ہوں گے، سارے صحابہ کلیاں ہوں گے، ان میں گلاب مہکتا ہوگا. مسجد نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. اہل صفہ درس میں کیسا لطف سہانا پاتے ہوں گے، پیارے آقا ان کے معلم، پیارے آقا ان کے معلم در سے محبت دیتے ہوں گے. مسجد نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. ان جلووں کے دن بھی تیری یاد کا حصہ ہوں گے جس میں حسن و حسین کا بچپن یارو، حسن و حسین کا بچپن یارو نانا کی گود میں گزرا ہوگا. مسجد نبوی یہ تو بتا کچھ سما وہ کیسا پیارا ہوگا. عرش پہ چاند چمکتا دیکھا، فرش کے چاند کا جلوہ دیکھو. عرش پہ چاند چمکتا دیکھا، فرش کے چاند کا جلوہ دیکھو. एक उंगली और चांद के टुकड़े, एक उंगली और चांद के टुकड़े, पूरे मोहम्मद कैसे होंगे। मस्जिद नबवी ये तो बता कुछ, समा वो कैसा प्यारा होगा। सहन में आका बैठे होंगे, सहन में आका बैठे होंगे, गिरद सहाब का हल्का होगा, गिरद सहाब का हल्का होगा, गिरद सहाब।
You're on mute, as I call it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope everyone is doing well. Today is Friday. It's the 8th of January, 2021 now. So we are firmly into the new year, as we call it, of 2021. It's fairly nippy around here in London today. It's fairly chilly. I think it was quite breezy during the day as well. So I've got a beanie on, and obviously I'm wearing a bit of a pullover just to make sure that I don't catch the cold as such. Nizam Bhai obviously is driving, so today we will have a recording put up by Nizam Bhai. So we'll inshallah start with the wider trends, the updates, things that have been happening over the last week in the global sense, and then obviously after that we'll have a quick conversation around the more the tafsir session that we regularly have, and I'll have a quick recording by Nizam Bhai as well. So in essence, I think as many of you might be well aware of it, the topmost item that has been making the ripples across the last week or so has been the event side of things that have been taking place in DC, in Washington DC, and obviously it's a major concern for the people in the United States, but beyond that as well. This is probably the first time, as you can see on your screen as well, that the protest rally that started in front of White House that went all the way up to the Capitol Hill, where the Senate and the Congress chambers are located in Washington DC. So it was quite remarkable in that instance that many people who previously would not have thought of it to be obviously in any way or form an issue, but you can see people broke into the Capitol Hill. The senators and the people in the Congress had to be taken away. And as you can see, there was quite a mayhem literally happening in that regard. And people were quite worried about what might be the case and how things might shape up in that essence, and how things, and you can see armed guard even protecting for people, not letting them inside the Congress itself. So it was quite shocking. I think something like this has obviously never happened in US before, and especially in one of the more, as we call it, mature democracies such as United States. This is something that was seen for the very first time, and there were obviously many of the different sides of the people who commented on this moment to say that if it would have been anyone from the black protesters, something like this would have never happened. And the hard handling tactics that police normally employ in protests being organized by different minority groups or groups that are not supported or being dominant in a certain race group, it's obviously a bit of a problematic issue in US for some time. So I think it's again a sad sight for the global audiences who were looking into the US in this election and hoping that there would be a peaceful transfer of power, which obviously never materialized in this instance. So that was again the biggest news item, as you would imagine, that this year, this week has been all about this discussion on how the Capitol Hill in US was pretty much ransacked by an angry mob of protesters that went inside the building and threatened to run riot in that instance. So quite a sad sight in there. Obviously, what we know at the moment is that President Trump has finally conceded his defeat, and he has conceded the election to Joe Biden, as has been a tradition for many number of years in the United States. But he has equally announced that he's not going to attend the inauguration ceremony that takes place on the 20th of January. So 20th of January, it will be the inauguration day for Joe Biden, when he will become the new president after taking the oath of office. And Kamala Devi Harris will become the vice president of the United States. So he won't be there. It's probably going to be one of the first instances in that regard that it has been not normally been a tradition. So in that sense, it's been obviously a tradition for a very long time that the current sitting president attends the inauguration, the new president's oath-taking ceremony. But President Trump has announced that he won't attend it. So again, I think this is obviously a big news item that's dominating the global news cycles, as you would imagine. One thing major that happened last week again was a big GCC summit took place in Al Ula near Riyadh near Medina in Saudi Arabia. And one of the major things that was announced as a declaration of Al Ula was the restoration of ties between Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, and Bahrain, who had pretty much blockaded the Qatar for nearly three and a half years. So in Al Ula declaration, it was finally agreed that the blockade will be finished and all the countries will restore all their ties with Qatar. And this crisis has been going on for quite a while. And I think, as you would imagine, many people, in essence, have been quite focused on this conflict between the Arab states of Qatar, UAE, primarily Saudi Arabia and Qatar, on the back and the context that Saudi Arabia has always maintained that Qatar has been siding with Iran, which seems to be a very major regional power in conflict with Saudi Arabia quite regularly. And equally, Saudi Arabia has been, in a way, putting pressure on Qatar that they've been supporting many of the political Islamist groups like Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and some of the proxies, in their view, that were opposing the Saudi royal family and the influence of Saudi Arabia in Middle East and GCC. But after three and a half years, this finally seems to be getting back to a certain degree of normality. As many of you might have seen these instances appearing of the Emir of Qatar, Sultan of Qatar, basically traveling to Saudi Arabia. Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, hugged him quite warmly. And there was obviously displays of mutual affection and signaling that the conflict between these two countries is well and truly behind them. There's obviously quite in a way, quite a heavy involvement of Jared Kushner, as many of you might be well aware of it, the son-in-law of Donald Trump. He has been a special envoy to Middle East peace by Donald Trump. And he has been pretty much the one who's been driving all the recent developments in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and some of the other Middle East countries, specifically with their policy towards Israel. He has been one who's been credited in bringing in a certain degree of normality between the ties of Israel and its neighboring Arab states. But equally, this peace deal that has been reported between Saudi Arabia and Qatar has also been associated to his doing, in essence, for the work that he's been working in the backhand and in the background to bring a number of different countries together in the Middle East areas. So this again is something that is quite in a way in the news cycles. Many people have been worried about this instance for quite a while, but they have been trying to bring these countries together, and hence finally there seems to be some sort of a deal being brokered between the countries being brought together in that instance. So we are hopeful that things start to get normal. We do hope and we pray that the issues that were dividing between Saudi Arabia and Qatar are properly behind us, and we see the end of this conflict and blockade that has been going on for quite a while. And equally, I think within this domain, Arab news and Arab media specifically has been quite prominently reporting this back. Basically, you can see that King Salman was quite personally appreciative of all the people who came to Al Ula for the Al Ula GCC summit, and they were quite pleased that this has gone really well, and many of the countries came together and they coordinated on this one, and this finally became a declaration that has brought to a certain degree end to the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the other neighboring countries. Now all the countries have started to reopen the ties. The airspace has been opened. The land border between Saudi Arabia and Qatar has been opened. And there is definitely a restoration of ties in the field of commerce, trade, and the kind of interpersonal relationships that existed between the two neighboring countries for centuries, where all the Arab people in certain areas, their families were quite heavily impacted and divided by half the people remaining in Qatar and half the remaining in Saudi Arabia or the other side. So that's the kind of backhand to it in that instance, and we again hope and pray that we try and hopefully bring some degree of normality to this long-running conflict. So, and this again, I think is something that has been quite heavily historically quite important on how the GCC nations, and especially Saudi Arabia and Qatar, come together, and they are able to bring a much more aligned foot forward in some way or form. So this was again happening in Middle East, and it's quite obviously, as you would imagine, a major issue in Middle East at the moment. That things are obviously not the way that people would have thought about or the way they would have hoped for. But now with this change in the Al Ula declaration, there's definitely some good hope for the future, that things basically start to improve and the relationships between the wider countries become a lot easier as well. So again, good news, some good news, at least with all the bad news that is happening across the world. This seems to be something that is in the right direction, and we definitely hope and pray that things continue to remain in the best manner in the coming days as well. So this is obviously quite useful in that regard, that these countries are coming together quite closely. Now, remaining on Middle East and moving on to Europe, I think one of the major elements that many people are fighting against in Europe, especially in the Eastern European Bosnia-Herzegovina area that has been reported. As many of you might be well aware of the migrant crisis that Europe had to go through, hundreds and thousands of people out from areas of the kind of war-torn areas such as Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and even all the way to Pakistan. So many people travel by foot and through the rough landscape and terrain, all the way from Eastern Europe into the Western European countries, specifically Germany, where they have been quite open to the migrants coming through, especially the war-torn migrants. But at the moment, many people are stuck outside Bosnia-Herzegovina, and there are roughly about 2,000 people, 2,500 people who are actually just in the cold outside in freezing temperatures. As you can see, these people they don't have any proper shelter, they don't have any proper housing, they don't have anything in that domain that you can call that they have a comfortable life, and they are in open jungles. But this cold wave that has come across the whole Europe, it was actually snowing in Madrid. I was speaking to someone in Madrid just a few hours ago, and it was snowing heavily with a big storm that has been coming through across Europe. And within this wet and windy and cold weather, all these people have been forced to camp in open fields and open air. And it's quite tough. As you would imagine, that these guys are quite worried in that instance, and how they will survive this winter and how they are going to be able to live through this difficult period during the winter seasons. So it's going to remain tough for these people, and we hope and pray again that some agencies, governments, UN, or some of the other charity organizations are able to help them and resolve some of the issues that these people are facing in such cold and freezing weather out in Bosnia and some of the surrounding countries around that as well. It's quite a sad story. Many migrants still stuck in freezing cold. They are living out in the open air, and we hope and pray that things do improve and there is some form of a solution found out to the kind of challenges these people are facing out in the cold air. I think moving on to Asia, one of the major news stories that's been making the rounds since the morning today is the release of Abu Bakr Basir, as he's known, 82-year-old gentleman, but he was the one who was known or seen to be the mastermind behind the 2002 Bali bombings. More than 200 people died in these bombings in Bali. As many of you might recall, that it was 12 October 2002 when the popular holiday island in Bali, 2 bombs went through the Petty Irish Bar and the nearby Surrey Club. 200 people were dead from 21 different nations. And Jamia Islamia, it was reported as an Al-Qaeda inspired group, was behind the attack that killed these 802 people. He was jailed for 15 years on the back of obviously the bombing, and on the back of the reports that he was the commander of that group at that time, roughly about 18 years ago. So he's now 82. He must have been 70 at that time, and he was the leader of that group. Put behind jail for 15 years, but completing 10 years and on good behavior. He was released from jail from today, and his family took him and obviously took him home. He is supposed to enter a de-radicalization program by the Indonesian government, and he's obviously being monitored by police throughout. So again, it is being kind of heavily criticized by many governments across the world, especially the Australian government. Australia lost the highest number of foreign nationals in the Bali bombings. Roughly about 89, 90 individuals lost their lives. And the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, has been quite vocal in terms of saying that the people should be really given tough punishments for the horror they brought into innocent lives. And release of any person of such stature will cause real discomfort for the people who lost their family and friends in that life, in that life-changing tragedy. So I think that's quite a significant issue, as you would imagine, that will remain alive in Indonesia for a while. Before now, we know that the 82-year-old has been released from jail and has been brought back to his family. Over in Pakistan, I think quite a major news story obviously has been around the Hazara community and the terror attack and the loss of life of around 11 miners that took place last week. All miners belong to the Hazara community, and they are a subgroup living in the outskirts of Quetta and Balochistan areas. And they've been targeted for violence for some time now, I think back roughly going even 15, 20 years, both on the sectarian basis. They were targeted because they have a Shiite background. They were targeted because of their race and nationalities as belonging to Afghan Hazara groups at times, or the local Hazara population. And they were seen different from the Baloch or the Pathan population and tribes. So the violence against this minority community in Balochistan has been on the rise for quite a while. And quite recently, one of the recent attacks took about 11 lives of the miners, some very young people even, and very bright people. I read about this guy who was one of the top people in the academic year in all of Balochistan, securing the third position overall in Balochistan from Tamil College in Balochistan. And they were slaughtered, unfortunately, via this terror attack quite recently. And the family, friends, relatives, and overall the whole community of the Hazara communities, they were protesting with their bodies for the last many weeks. And they were saying that we are not going to go away and put our bodies to rest until the Prime Minister comes and meets us. But there's been quite a backlash from the government officials as well. And Imran Khan today went even all the way down to say that don't try and blackmail me in coming and meeting you guys before you bury your dead bodies, which is, it was obviously, as you would imagine, not the right tone and not the right approach in such a different circumstances that they should be adopting, or a prime minister should be adopting. And this is quite. So quite a harsh use of language by Imran Khan, and I think this is quite discouraging for the people who see a prime minister as the one in authority who's responsible and connected with the nation that he is the prime minister for. But Imran Khan obviously went a bit further away, I think, than he should have in any essence. It cannot be obviously supported in a certain manner when a community has been targeted, that the people in authority and power can be the ones who come in and provide a certain degree of relief and come and share the grief of these people, rather than calling that they are trying to blackmail the prime minister of a country. So again, quite a sad reality of Pakistan in the matter that we've seen, and we hope and pray that things do improve in the future, and we have more sensible people who see these things in a sensitive manner and speak in a calculated manner, and they are not trying to really trigger negativity or really harm and hurt people more than what they've already are going through in that sense. So yeah, that's obviously in Pakistan. Nearby in China, I think one of the good stories is the Harbin Ice Festival, and it's a very famous ice festival that happens every year in Harbin in China, and it's a snow sculpture festival that is being organized every year. And this year, you can see it looks wonderful. It's a proper big size ice festival. You can see the little people dotted around the big the kind of sculptures that have been built from ice, and you can see number of different locations being reflected, different country landmarks being built. In pagodas are there. I can see some different temples and mosques being built by the ice as well. And the most interesting part is that this ice is actually brought in from nearby river that freezes every year. So the sculptures and the workers bring blocks and blocks and blocks of ice, transport them via the trucks to this location outside Harbin. And then they make all the sculptures, and they're really illuminated with lights and colors across the nights, and it carries out for the whole winter. So many people turn up, many people visit this on an annual basis, and the intricate sculpturing, as you can see in the picture in front of you, how they really spend time in building each one of these individually, it is quite remarkable if you come to think about it. So it's quite a cool festival. Well, it is a cool festival for the lack of better word. It is a cold festival. It's an ice sculpture festival, as you would imagine. But the work, the artistry of the people working on this is always very cool. And you can see many people reflect some famous figures. They build some famous buildings, and they obviously build up with a lot of light, colors, and ice within that domain as well. So this happens every year, and this is a construction site, as you can see, when and how it was built up over the last few weeks. As I mentioned, the ice blocks are actually brought in from the river nearby that freezes every year. So there's a massive availability of ice that is being cut through from the river top, and then they take all the smaller blocks of ice and take it through, and then construct all the different buildings, all the different sculptures, all different tombs, pagodas, and every one of the landmarks that you can see, along with the functioning restaurant. There's a full restaurant inside the Ice City as well, where many people go in and eat on a daily basis. But as you would imagine, as generally the case is with lights, color, and ice, it looks wonderful. It looks beautiful. And this is something that obviously happens in China, in the Harbin City every year. And hence, it is seen as one of the most wonderful, beautiful displays of ice festivities in the winter seasons in China. This has been going on for quite a while. I think it originally started back in 1960s. There was a gap in the festival began in 1960s, and then there was a gap in 1980s, and then it's back for its 37th edition. So anyone who gets a chance, obviously, one day we hope, if you do get a chance to travel to China, then obviously I think this is a wonderful festival to look into, and something that there's quite beautiful destination on its own as well. So that was it. I think quite a quick overview of a few of the things that are happening across the world today. As I mentioned, inshallah, we'll continue with our regular transmission. We have a number of different, you can say them, shows as we have on a daily basis that we organize, and there's a whole variety of programming that is available on a weekly basis that you can go in and listen about the health topics. You can listen about the topics about religion. You can learn Arabic. And if you haven't already, I would say please do go to our Facebook page, the Female Quran Haze, where you can obviously go in and see the page. You can see with the community. You can obviously see I'm live on the page at the moment as well, so you can see the weekly live roundups in there, and then obviously you can see a number of the historical and the kind of all the previous posts that have been running. The Arabic classes are there, the health specials, the Sira reminders, there's a discussion from the book every week that we hear about the famous books by Maulana Maududi. There's discussion about the marriages and how to build them up and continue them in a proper manner. There's obviously transmission where we discuss with our health experts about the issues around Corona and how this thing is growing up. So I would highly suggest and request that all of you, inshallah, visit the page and like the page, share the posts. And then obviously whosoever is following us on our YouTube channel, then you can obviously go to our YouTube channel, subscribe our YouTube channel, and obviously see the details on the YouTube channel as well. So alhamdulillah, I think that's an effort that we've been ongoing for quite some time now. And we would definitely hope that we continue with help and support and initiative and encouragement from all of our brothers and sisters and friends and families, everyone across the whole world. But till tomorrow, inshallah, until our new transmission show comes through, we'll inshallah say goodbye for now, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Jazakallah khair.